Let me tell you something. See, people think silence means a lack of feeling, but sometimes silence is louder than words, louder than excuses, louder than any "I miss you" text you never got, because when a man goes quiet, it doesn't always mean he doesn't care. It means he's wrestling with something. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's fear, maybe it's the fact that he knows you deserve more than the half effort he's been giving, and deep down he's scared that your worth is greater than his comfort zone. You ever notice how some men crave attention but can't handle affection? They want the thrill, but not the responsibility. They want to feel needed, but not truly seen, because being seen requires vulnerability, and vulnerability scares the life out of folks who never healed their wounds, who never learned that love ain't a game you win. It's a truth you grow into. It's patience, it's presence, it's peace, not performance. Now, don't get me wrong, baby, sometimes silence ain't confusion. It's confirmation. It's God's way of saying, stop chasing noise, because your peace ain't meant to compete with somebody's chaos. Your value ain't supposed to beg for validation. You were not built to audition for someone's attention. You were created to attract through your energy, through your confidence, through your calm, because a woman in peace is more powerful than a woman in pain. And when you stop reacting, when you stop calling, when you stop explaining yourself to someone who's already decided not to listen, that's when your silence starts teaching the loudest lesson. See, here's the thing. A man who truly wants you, he gonna move, he gonna act, he gonna show, because consistency is the real language of desire, not mixed signals, not maybe later, not I've been busy. Nah, busy people make time for peace, not confusion. And love don't require a GPS. If he's meant for you, he'll find his way. But if he's ignoring you, if he's ghosting you, if he's leaving you guessing, then baby, he's teaching you something about him and something about yourself. He's showing you where your boundaries still need strength, where your patience has turned into self-betrayal, where your love has become overcompensation. I know it hurts. I know you replay that conversation in your head like a song that won't stop. I know you check that phone, waiting for a text that never comes. But let me tell you something. Sometimes the silence is your healing. Sometimes that no call is God's protection. Sometimes the heartbreak is the beginning of self-respect, because when you stop asking why he's silent, you start hearing your own voice again. You start remembering who you were before you started trying to prove your worth to someone who forgot to see it. You don't chase silence. Baby, you outgrow it. You learn to smile again without needing a reason. You learn to love yourself so loud that his quiet doesn't echo anymore, because there's nothing more magnetic than a woman who walks in confidence, who knows she's the table, the chair, the whole room, not the appetizer to someone's insecurity. And when you reach that place, oh, he'll feel it. Trust me, same silence he gave you will haunt him at night, because peace has a sound too. It's the sound of you not calling, not begging, not waiting. It's the sound of you moving on gracefully. And let me tell you what most don't realize. When a woman detaches with grace, when she lets go without drama, that's the moment a man starts waking up. See, your silence becomes the mirror he can't avoid. It reflects his immaturity, his indecision, his fear, and it hits him where his ego lives, because men don't forget peace. They don't forget women who carried themselves like royalty, even when their hearts were breaking. They don't forget the woman who stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped negotiating her value. Now let's talk about craving, because craving ain't love. Craving is the hunger of unhealed parts of us. It's wanting comfort from the same hands that cause confusion. It's trying to fill the void with attention instead of connection. But baby, love don't crave. Love commits. Love communicates. Makes room for you without you having to beg for a seat. And when he craves you but goes silent, it means he's battling his own demons. He wants you but can't face himself. He loves the idea of you, but not the responsibility that comes with your presence. And that's not your burden to fix. That's his to face. You can't heal someone by staying broken. You can't teach him love by losing your peace. And you sure can't make a man ready by waiting. So stop waiting. Stop rehearsing pain. Stop romanticizing inconsistency, because silence from someone who claims to care isn't mystery. It's maturity missing in action. It's fear wearing pride like a mask. It's a boy pretending to be a man while a real woman quietly outgrows him. See, women think their silence is weakness, but it's your most powerful response, because silence is strategy. Silence is self-respect. Silence is saying, I could explain, but I won't, because explaining myself to someone who chooses not to understand is how I lose me. And when you master that, you glow different, you move different, and the same man who went silent starts noticing, starts remembering, starts realizing that the peace you gave him was the best part of his life, and now he can't buy it back, can't talk his way back in, because peace don't negotiate. Listen, baby, you don't gotta punish him. Life gone do that. Karma gone. Teach what your heart tried to explain, and when he finally grows enough to understand your worth, you'll be long gone, healed, happy, glowing, probably laughing with someone who doesn't need to go silent to prove his masculinity, because real men don't confuse silence with strength. They communicate, they protect peace, not test it. And you, my dear, gotta stop interpreting silence as rejection, start seeing it as direction, stop calling it loss, start calling it lesson, because love is supposed to bring out the softness in you, not anxiety, not overthinking, not waiting for a text at midnight. And if it does, that's not love, that's attachment dressed as hope. So when he goes silent, don't chase, don't beg, don't lose your rhythm. Just pause, breathe, smile, and let your energy speak, because real queens don't chase. They attract, they radiate, they command respect without a word. And that's the lesson. Your presence was the blessing, your silence is the closure, and your peace is the revenge. And maybe, just maybe, one day he'll realize it wasn't that you were too much, it's that he wasn't enough at the time to meet your peace. But that realization ain't yours to wait for, because waiting on silence to speak is how you miss the sound of your own healing. So keep walking, keep glowing, keep laughing, keep rising, because the one who's meant for you won't make you guess, won't make you chase, won't make you shrink. He'll see your value, speak your love language, and protect your peace like it's his own. And until that man comes, don't you lower your standards, raise your energy, because the right one won't be silent. He'll be steady, he'll be sure, he'll be there. That's the truth, baby. Silence isn't rejection, it's revelation of who values your presence and who only enjoyed your attention. Because silence has a way of showing you what words were hiding. It exposes truth in a language that noise can't speak. When a man grows quiet, you don't chase, you listen, not to his excuses, but to the echo of your own worth, you see. Sometimes his silence is not confusion, it's clarity. It's him realizing the weight of what he took for granted, the softness he no longer has access to, the laughter that once made his days lighter, now gone, and suddenly that silence becomes louder than any argument you could have had, louder than any message you could have sent, because silence, baby, silence is power wrapped in peace. And peace is the one thing that shakes a man who once thought your attention was guaranteed. You ever notice how people start to realize your value when you stop reminding them you care, when you stop sending the good morning texts, stop checking if they ate, stop explaining how you feel? That's when silence starts speaking louder than your love ever did, because your absence will scream the truth their ego refused to hear. You were never asking for too much. You were simply giving too much to someone who gave too little. So when you get quiet, don't feel weak, feel wise, because quietness is a grown woman's response to disrespect. You've cried, you've explained, you've waited, but now you rest, you heal, and that's the kind of silence that demands attention without saying a single word. Silence is not punishment, it's preservation. It's not about revenge. It's about remembering that your energy is expensive and not everyone deserves the luxury of it. So when he goes silent, don't panic, match the energy, match it with grace, not games, match it with stillness, not stubbornness, because silence in the hands of a strong woman isn't coldness, it's control. It's saying, I don't chase what's running away from peace. I attract what knows how to stand still with me, because when a woman understands her value, she no longer argues to prove her worth. She lets silence do the speaking, and that silence becomes a mirror, reflecting to him everything he lost when he stopped listening. You see, silence isn't empty. It's full of answers, full of realization, full of self-respect. It's the space between what you want and what you deserve, and sometimes the distance in that space is the very thing that saves you. Because the truth is, everyone is meant to meet you at your level of emotional honesty. Not everyone has the maturity to match your communication, and when they can't, their silence shows it. So instead of taking it personally, take it as confirmation, because a man who values you will never leave you questioning his intentions in silence. He'll fill the space with effort, consistency with presence. But if he doesn't, that silence becomes your sign, your guide, your teacher. There's a different kind of confidence that grows in a woman who no longer fears silence. She starts realizing she doesn't need validation to feel valuable. She doesn't need replies to feel relevant. She doesn't need attention to feel alive. She starts finding her peace in solitude, her power and patience, her strength and her stillness, and that's when she becomes magnetic, because a woman who isn't desperate to be understood becomes unforgettable. Her silence turns into mystery, her presence turns into memory, and her energy becomes something that lingers long after she's gone. That's the kind of silence that keeps him up at night, wondering what happened, what changed, why can't I stop thinking about her? But baby, nothing changed. You just finally stopped explaining your worth to someone who already knew it and still chose to ignore it. Silence is sacred. It's the moment where your soul starts to speak louder than your wounds. It's where healing begins. It's where clarity flows, because when you're quiet, you can finally hear what God's been trying to tell you all along, that you don't need to chase anyone who's not meant to stay, that love doesn't have to be begged for, that peace isn't found in proving, it's found in protecting your energy. So when you stop responding to disrespect, when you stop entertaining inconsistency, when you stop over explaining your heart to someone who only listens halfway, you're not losing them, you're gaining yourself. And that is the most powerful comeback a woman can ever make. The world will try to tell you that silence means weakness, that if you don't fight for him, you'll lose him. But here's the truth. If silence makes him forget you, he was never meant to remember you in the first place. Because a man who truly cares doesn't need noise to know your value. He feels it in the peace you bring. He notices it in the way your energy shifts when you start choosing yourself, and that scares him, because now he sees that you were never the one chasing. You were the one holding him up emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and when you pull back, the imbalance hits him hard. He starts realizing the silence isn't rejection, it's consequence, and the consequence of taking a good heart for granted is learning to live without it. There's beauty in restraint, in not reacting, in letting people wonder, letting them sit in their own silence, because silence is like an echo. It always returns to the one who created it. So let him feel the weight of his own distance. Let him taste the emptiness of his own inconsistency. And while he's doing that, you rise, you grow, you glow differently because your silence isn't bitterness, it's boundary. It's the quiet declaration that says, I love me more, I choose me more, and if my peace costs your attention, that's a price I'm finally willing to pay, because your silence is not empty, it's full of everything you deserve, but never received. When you finally stop explaining your worth, you start living in it, and that's when life starts moving in your favor, because silence attracts truth and noise attracts confusion. When you become still, the right people start recognizing your energy. They feel the calm confidence in your spirit. They sense the shift in your boundaries. And suddenly, you're not chasing love anymore. You're attracting alignment because your silence has filtered out the ones who only wanted convenience, leaving space for the ones who want connection. So don't fear silence. Embrace it. Let it do what words never could. Let it teach, let it heal, let it reveal. Because in the end, silence isn't the absence of communication. It's the presence of self-respect. It's your soul saying, I've said enough, I've given enough, and now I'm done performing for people who never clap for me. Silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much to keep pouring into something that drains you. And that's a lesson that only strong women learn, the ones who have cried enough to realize that not every response deserves a reaction, that sometimes peace is louder than passion, and that the real flex is emotional discipline. When you master silence, you master yourself, you stop explaining your peace, you stop apologizing for your boundaries, you stop begging to be seen, and that's when your energy changes, your walk changes, your voice changes, because you've learned that silence doesn't need to prove, it just needs to be. And when you start living in that kind of stillness, people who once overlooked you begin to crave the energy they can no longer reach. That's the power of silence, not in the noise it lacks, but in the clarity it creates. And once you've tasted that kind of peace, you'll never trade it for validation again, because silence will have taught you the most beautiful truth of all, that the ones who truly value your presence will never make you question your importance in their absence. There comes a time in every woman's life when she has to stop trying to prove her worth to someone who only sees her as an option, because you can't teach appreciation to someone who was never raised to value loyalty. And you can't build connection on the foundation of confusion. When a man starts ignoring you, he's not always rejecting you. Sometimes he's testing how much of yourself you're willing to lose trying to keep his attention. And that's where the lesson begins, not in chasing, in crying, but in choosing yourself quietly, gracefully, and powerfully, because your silence becomes your strength, your absence becomes your answer, and your peace becomes your proof. He pulls away. Don't panic, breathe, because a woman who reacts from fear gives her power away, but a woman who responds from peace commands respect without speaking, you see, isn't about chasing someone who hides. It's about recognizing when your energy is no longer being reciprocated and having the courage to pull back, because you can't pour into someone who isn't even holding a cup. And if you keep pouring, you'll find yourself empty while they stay full. And that's not love. That's self-abandonment dressed as loyalty. You don't heal by convincing someone to stay. You heal by learning to let go when your soul starts whispering that it's time. The truth is, when a woman decides to stop fighting for someone who stopped showing up, she doesn't lose love, she regains clarity, because that's when she starts to see everything she was blinded by, the one-sided effort, the emotional breadcrumbs, the inconsistency disguised as confusion. And once that fog clears, she realizes she wasn't being ignored because she wasn't enough. She was being ignored because she was too much for a man who was never ready for real love. So instead of begging him to understand, she starts teaching herself the language of peace, rhythm of boundaries, the melody of detachment, and that's when she becomes untouchable. Every time you choose silence instead of reaction, you're planting a seed of self-respect, and that seed grows quietly but powerfully. It starts changing the way you move, the way you speak, the way you walk, because you start realizing that not every action deserves your energy, not every question needs an answer, not every emotion deserves a performance. And when you start thinking that way, something shifts in your spirit. You stop being the woman who over-explains, who over-gives, who over-loves, and you become the woman who attracts peace, not pain, the one who knows that real love doesn't make you beg to be seen, because your energy speaks for itself. You don't have to block him. You don't have to beg him. You don't even have to announce your worth, because a woman who knows what she brings to the table doesn't chase anyone who's unsure if they're hungry. When you start walking with self-respect, you stop fighting for understanding from those who were never listening, because silence has a way of making people confront themselves, and that's what scares them the most. When you stop talking, they start hearing their own noise, their own mistakes, their own emptiness, and that's when they realize the peace they once took for granted was never coming from the world, it was coming from you. It's funny how silence flips the power dynamic, how the one who used to take you for granted starts chasing your attention the moment you stop giving it, because people don't miss you when you're available, they miss you when they can no longer access you. They start remembering your laughter, your softness, your kindness, but by then you've changed. You've grown, you've detached. And that's the kind of glow that can't be faked, because your energy becomes untouchable, your boundaries become magnetic, and your peace becomes irresistible. That's the irony of silence. It makes them hear what your words could never explain. Silence doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you started caring correctly. It means you finally realized that love isn't measured by how much noise you make. It's measured by how much peace you keep. So instead of arguing, you breathe. Instead of reacting, you reflect. Instead of chasing, you choose. And that choice creates freedom, because when a woman learns to master her emotions, she becomes unstoppable. Her silence becomes wisdom. Her patience becomes protection. Her boundaries become beauty. And her energy becomes the very thing that teaches others how to treat her, not through confrontation, through consistency. Every time you go quiet, you give the universe permission to reorder your life, because silence creates space, and space invites clarity, and clarity attracts peace, and that peace draws everything meant for you closer, because now your energy is clean, your intentions are pure, and your spirit is focused, no longer distracted by chaos that drains you, no longer chasing validation that never lasts, no longer explaining your heart to people who were only there to borrow it. And when you get to that level of self-awareness, you become a different kind of woman, not loud, not angry, but radiant, calm, steady, and grounded. That's real power, the kind that doesn't need to prove, it just is. People will test your silence, try to provoke you. They'll try to draw you back into chaos, because your peace threatens their control. But when you stand firm in your silence, when you no longer respond to manipulation, that's when your boundaries speak louder than your emotions. And you start realizing that silence is not distance, it's direction. It's the path that leads you away from what drains your spirit and toward what feeds your soul. Because in silence, you remember who you are. And when you remember that, you can't go back to chasing what you've outgrown. You see, a woman who has mastered silence doesn't do revenge. She does release. She doesn't do games. She does growth. She doesn't do begging. She does boundaries, because her peace has become more valuable than any temporary attention. She no longer trades her energy for validation. She no longer sacrifices her joy for potential. She's learned that potential doesn't pay the price of peace, only purpose does. And her purpose now is simple: to protect her heart, to elevate her spirit, to walk in grace, and to let silence speak for her when words no longer work. It's not about ignoring him to get a reaction. It's about rising above the need for one. It's about detaching from the idea that closure comes from someone else's confession, because closure doesn't come from conversation. It comes from decision. And when you decide that you deserve peace more than confusion, everything changes. The silence that once felt heavy starts to feel holy. The loneliness that once hurt starts to feel like healing, because now you're not waiting for him to return. You're preparing for the version of you that no longer needs him to feel whole. You don't lose anything by being silent. You gain everything. You gain your power, your peace, your perspective. You start hearing your intuition louder than your emotions. You start feeling your worth deeper than your wounds. And you start realizing that silence isn't about winning or losing. It's about understanding. It's about saying, I choose me, not because I'm selfish, because I've spent too much time saving everyone else. It's about realizing that peace is not found in people. It's found in presence. And your silence is your invitation for peace to enter. There's something magnetic about a woman who doesn't overreact, who doesn't overexplain, who doesn't overextend, because she radiates calm. She radiates mystery. She radiates self-control. And that's what draws people to her, not because she's unavailable, but because she's selective, not because she's heartless, but because she's healed. And when you get to that level, you start understanding that your silence is not about shutting down. It's about tuning into your purpose, your peace, your power. Because now you don't just move different, you vibrate different. And that vibration becomes your protection. When you master silence, you stop chasing closure and start creating peace, because silence is where you meet yourself again, where you rediscover the woman you were before the heartbreak, before the chaos, before the noise, the woman who laughed loudly, dreamed boldly, loved freely, and trusted herself completely. That woman never left. She was just buried under all the noise. And silence is how she finds her way back home. And once she's home, once she's grounded, once she's healed, she'll never let anyone disturb that peace again, because now she knows her worth. And that knowledge speaks louder than any conversation ever could. So when he ignores you, when he goes silent, don't chase, don't plead, don't explain, because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is shifting. It means the universe is rearranging your energy, your path, your heart, and it's preparing you for what's next, something better, something peaceful, something aligned. And while you wait, stay still, stay strong, stay silent, because sometimes silence isn't the pause before the answer. It is the answer. And that answer always leads you back to yourself, the most powerful place you can ever return to.